We have a second presentation, 10-minute presentation from Homer Electric Association by Brad Janorski. And there's pictures.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. I've met most of you before, but for the record, my name is Brad Janorski, General Manager, Homer Electric Association, and obviously outside the city limits. So, just want to give you folks a quick overview of what we've talked about in the past. So, there's only 12 slides. I'll go through them pretty promptly. You've seen some of them before, and so I'm not going to belabor the point on many of them. This slide you've seen before talks about the deal that we discussed last spring. Nothing has changed. In fact, you've seen the slide. The only change is partway down the upper left-hand quadrant, price adjusted for Seward infrastructure, and I'll get into that in a second. The rest of it you've seen before. The deal, other than changing some dates in there, the original asset purchase agreement remains unchanged. And as I talked about last time, rates were expected to increase when we left Chugach in 13, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Rates have since stabilized, and as time goes on, they are becoming more and more competitive. In addition, our strategic plan, we continue to look at in great detail every 3 years. Our third year is coming up, so the second week of October, our board will get together and figure out the big thing that they're asking themselves today is, what are we going to do in the future for wholesale power supply? So, in fact, somebody asked me earlier today, Brad, have you been following anything going on in Seward? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm busy. Just like the rest of you, I'm really busy and it's summertime. So the only thing I know for sure is fall is coming. So with that, I know there are a couple of myths that have been floating around. Both either I've heard them or somebody has told me they exist, and so I'm going to address some of them today and certainly leave time for questions that you may have of myself. With me as well, John Jungling, who you've met before, and Carrie Ann Baker. Both of you met two of my staff folks before. One is I heard HEA doesn't own a battery energy storage system or a BESS in Soldotna that we discussed. That is absolutely, obviously, it's a myth. Now, we do own it. We own 100% of it. And if you're not sure, you can talk to our CFO. She will promise you we own it. It's on our balance sheet. The second one, HEA plans to close the Fort Raymond power plant. These are all myths. It is certainly something that we have never talked about. I envision never shutting down this plant. The same reason we have two facilities in Soldovia, one in Port Graham. In fact, the one in Soldovia, we replaced the older one a couple years ago. The oldest, Unit 1, will get replaced next year. So we invest heavily in our generation, and it's one of the things that we're very proud about. So we have no misqualms about shutting down this plant, and I think you heard that from us last spring as well. But I am told there's rumors out there. It is not true. Seward's 14 to 18 million invested in assets will not be recouped. The asset purchase agreement very clearly says, based on the balance sheet of the prior year, plus any prudent utility investments made in plant. So any investments you make along Nash Road, any upgrades you make to current substations, that will just get tacked onto the current purchase price. In fact, I heard the comment earlier about selling the utility to another utility. Seward's customers aren't selling anything. HEAs, they are becoming members of a larger electric utility, which is different. So HEA will pay for those investments. So we know going with an affirmative vote, it still needs to go through the Regulatory Commission. That takes time. The last thing we want is any of Seward's existing customers or hopefully future HEA members to be negatively impacted due to the sale. Seward employees are not protected after 3 years. Not true. We've been dealing with IBEW for decades. We've got 3 bargaining agreements today. we see no difference in this one as well. So we've got a good long-term relationship. There's been no, I don't know how we'd replace it. In fact, I'd like to continue to grow, and as you guys know, in all businesses, including ours, there's a shortage of talent. I mean, we pay well, but every industry across this country today is trying to get more people. The good news is our turnover's been very low. If you follow the national average, it's in excess of 50%, which is, to me, it's unheard of, but we're under 10%. Seward is not, myth number 5, Seward is not subject to provision of SB 123. If you're not familiar with SB 123, it's what the legislature created back in 2019, 2020, having to do with an ERO, Electric Reliability Organization. And you can see in the text what it did, in addition creating an integrated resource plan. It creates the reliability standards that, yes, you have to follow, just like Homer and Chugach and Matanuska and Golden Valley. We're all interconnected. There is no exemption to that. In fact, one of the co-sponsors of that bill called me a couple weeks ago, asking me specifically what changes we need to make to it, because at its current pace, its budget will exceed the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. And her response was, that's not what we intended. I says, I know, but this is a very dynamic industry. HEA does not make its own power. In fact, I heard this question come up recently. We have been producing our own power since 2014. Prior to that, we continued to operate a 40 megawatt frame 6, GE frame 6. The steam on the back end went to Agrium. The electricity went to Chugach so they could resell it to Homer Electric. In 2014, January 1st, we started creating our own electricity. Myth number 7 that I heard, HEA ended its Chugach wholesale agreement in 2014 without proper notification. Not true. HEA and Matanuska both gave, at that time, plenty of opportunities to Chugach. In fact, they had proposed to us joining them with the South Anchorage project, if you're familiar with it, putting on a 4th unit. We started down that path for a while and went, this isn't going the way we wanted. We want, like everybody wants, local control. And we weren't getting it. So in a 12-month period, Chugach lost 51% of their wholesale load. So as you had heard earlier, Seward is the only remaining wholesale customer of Chugach Electric. MEA and HEA both have left. MEA 12 months after us. HEA cannot guarantee a board seat. No, we can't. But our board passed a resolution creating another district, which would be from east of Sterling, which obviously includes the system. And the only folks, or at that point, if it becomes part of Homer Electric, the only members that vote on that representation, as is today within the district, are those folks that live, those members that live within the district. In fact, it's part of the asset purchase agreement, so I suspect the Regulatory Commission would make that mandatory. And that's all I have.
Boy, you timed that perfectly.
So, with that, it helps to have a clock.
This is why we do that.
Any questions?
Yeah, questions. Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Wells.
I have 2 questions, Madam Mayor.
You can do 2.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much to all of you. You've done an amazing job. And so my first question is, does HEA make a profit?
HEA has, through the chair,
Yes.
HEA has margins as a not-for-profit cooperative. Any margins are allocated back to our members. Sometimes, and the board makes that decision. Sometimes they take a piece of those margins and allocate it to folks that were members or who bought power the previous year. Other times they go back to the oldest year, 30 years ago, and they retire all of it. If we get a loss, we carry that over to the following year. We don't allocate it, and then we take that loss the next year off of a margin. So historically, we've retired a lot in excess revenues that that it exceeded expenses. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. And my second question is, the ad hoc committee has stated that, some of the ad hoc committee members, I should say, have stated that your power supply via gas is about out and your rates are going to skyrocket, whereas Chugach has more availability, more options, and therefore their rates will be more stable.
Great question through the chair. Right now, there's a movement to get all the utilities to buy from the same pool of gas, because what we're seeing happen, last time we went out for bids for gas, and you guys heard me talk about this in the past, we had one supplier. It's hard to negotiate with one supplier. So what the utilities are finding is, because gas molecules are a commodity, it is a direct pass-through to our members, and we are working, and the goal is, I choose my words carefully because you sign so many confidentiality agreements, you got to be careful what you say. Everybody that uses Cook Inlet gas, doesn't matter where it is in Cook Inlet, from existing wells is declining. You can talk to multiple experts and not on one of them will tell you that there's a shortage of gas in Cook Inlet, but they will tell you that production from existing wells is declining. We have worked out in that pool today is us and NSTAR, and as of when our current contract expires at the end of the first quarter next year, NSTAR and HEA will pay the same for those molecules. It'll be slightly higher than what it is today, but everybody's going to be paying more. In the next 5 years, we're all going to pay, I'll say 5 to 10, but I think it's closer to 5. All the utilities are going to pay the same thing for gas. In fact, if you talk to Fairbanks, they're like, we'd give anything to pay higher price for gas because it's still cheaper than diesel. So, short term, it's up in the air. It is a straight pass-through. But in the not too distant future, we're all going to be paying the same thing for those molecules.
Thank you.
Great question.
Other questions? Councilmember.
First off, thank you for displacing a lot of the myths I've been hearing, especially one that you guys are still buying power from Chugach. My question is, why did HEA and Matsu leave Chugach?
Through the chair, that's a great question. And if I heard it correctly, is why did Homer Electric and Matsu Matanuska Electric Cooperative both leave Chugach Electric? I can't speak for MEA, but for HEA, I think one of the things, and I'm going on memory now because this is back in it's almost a decade ago. And I had to chuckle because I think I was the only one that caught the wisdom comment in the senior citizens, and I'm going, I split 2 molars off earlier this week, and my kids tease me about it because they say I'm getting old, and so wisdom stuck hard in my head with wisdom teeth falling out. And, but speaking for Homer Electric from my recollection, we started down the path, we wanted economies of scale, and it's hard to get that when you're rural, like we are. And eventually we found out that we wanted to go into it eyes wide open as partners. And within about 4 to 6 weeks, it was very evident when we asked the manufacturer, where's the information? Like, you should have it because your partner's got it for a week now. So it continued to digress from there, and we decided, no, we're going to do our own. In addition, it gave our board the flexibility to be out from under a wholesale power contract, and instead, as we find competitive and reliable, to add some other sources to diversify. So we are currently looking at some solar projects, we are looking at some wind projects, we are looking at tidal. I will be honest with you, tidal's a ways out. I was really gung-ho 5 years ago, but the technology it's a decade away. And anybody that tells you differently is probably not being straight up with you. So that's the best of my recollection, is we really did want to dictate our future. We got tired of being told what to do. One thing is that both MEA and HEA, we bought 51% of all the power they generated, and to my knowledge, we had 3 votes on there. 3 votes as members, and nobody on the board. So back then, they had roughly 66,000 members. We were 3 members of that 66, and we bought over half their wholesale power. And I think that kind of capped it for my board.
Thank you.
One more question.
One more question.
My understanding is the Chugach rates are going to be going up. Did you explain why they're going to be going up for Chugach? From your understanding of how the system works.
Through the chair, I know they filed a rate. They made a rate filing for interim refundable rates and permanent rates, and that is available through the Regulatory Commission of Alaska's website. All that information, when you're a regulated entity like Homer Electric, Chugach, Matanuska, Golden Valley, and NSTAR, our tariffs and anything we file with the commission is almost all of it's open to the public. So if I want to see what Golden Valley filed, I don't have to be a Golden Valley member. It's open to the public. It's no different than in the legislature if you want to see drafts of a bill. So I can't speak on behalf of Chugach.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Other questions? Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, in one of your slides, you mentioned that your goal is to be increasingly competitive with Chugach. But you also mentioned about economy of scale. Obviously, Homer Electric doesn't serve as many clients as Chugach. Chugach, with its extra client, more customer base, their economy of scale has an advantage. How does that work for you guys? How can you be competitive with Chugach, given that information?
Through the chair, that's a great question. On economies of scale, I always say, if I want the lowest price of beef, I'll go live in Nebraska or Iowa. But Alaska has things that Nebraska and Iowa don't have. But we choose to live here anyway. In fact, somebody made the comment earlier about the high price of groceries. You want cheaper groceries? Move to Anchorage. I don't want to live in Anchorage. I think they will always have the economies of scale. But on the fuel side, as the question came up earlier from Councilman Wells, on the fuel side, eventually we're all going to pay the same price for those molecules. I think on the transmission side, on the wheeling side, someday we're going to get to that point as well, and I've explained that to my board. I say the next 5 to 10 years, whether you're wheeling from shipping power from Nikiski to Kenai or Nikiski to Fairbanks, as long as this transmission system is unconstrained, it will cost the same. We call it a postage stamp rate. Just like if you want to mail a letter from here to Homer or here to New York City, it's going to be 50-some cents, same price. So we will never keep up with the economies of scale. However, we do have built in the flexibility our board strategically to add other things, like today we're 90% dependent on natural gas. So we are looking at other opportunities to help reduce that. I think I made that comment earlier that if you find a financial advisor that says put all your money into one stock, you should run. Every advisor will tell you diversify. And quite frankly, we're in the same boat. Guess what? Are you going to get the best return every time? No. But the goal is to get the best return over the long haul and still be able to sleep at night.
Okay, one more quick question.
Okay. You've mentioned that you're diversifying on your end, but for your customer base, how do you guys incentivize solar, wind, heat pumps? Do you have strong programs in relation to, say, Chugach even? I don't know if you can compare, but at least what kind of programs do you have that incentivize that for the customer?
Really, I always say if you focus on yourself, you don't have to worry about your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
We probably have the most successful net metering program in the state of Alaska. We are looking, we've got a rebate program, and you can go to our website and see all of these. Rebate program for heat pumps, trying to incentivize heat pumps. In areas that are connected to the NSTAR gas system, which is most of our developed areas like Homer, Soldotna, Kenai. It's hard to compete, although we put in some heat pumps of all places at our generation plant in the office facilities. We've got some heat pumps in place. We're really pushing them South Kachemak Bay, where the price of fuel, oil is much more, and they do not have availability of gas. So we're very active in heat pumps, net metering. I don't care if you want to put up your own wind turbine, you want to put up your own solar panels, you're limited by the Regulatory Commission to 25 kW, which will cover most homes. So we are very active in those areas. Does that answer your question, Council?
Yeah.
Okay. We kind of ran on. Is there any? Okay. Thank you very much for that. That answered a lot of questions for people, I hope.
Yeah, thank you. If you have more questions, please
We know where to
call
find
us.
you.
Or my staff. I'll answer anytime.
Thank you.
I'm going to call for a 5-minute break.